Okay, so yeah, I don't know what to do for a cold open for this either. Okay, it normally it just happens throughout the episode now, or like we have something planned.
I can just pour some water down a sink.
Just some steamy formaldehyde water.
And
Yeah.
if I put a googly eye on the growth on my left testicle, it looks a little bit like the monster. That's also good for our OnlyFans. Two birds, one stone.
Yeah.
I guess that's gonna have to do for
Uh,
our opening.
let's jump in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cinema Symposium. Today we have another special guest, my friend Daemin Lee. Daemin, what's up?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Daemin, film fanatic, connoisseur of the cinematic arts, as to say.
Oh, oh wow, yeah, no. See, I just brought
Bonus
Daemin on
class
right
now.
I've taken one film class in college. That's like my only credential about this so far.
You're
I think
more qualified than us. We had
Yeah.
actually seen a movie before we started the series. So we're all at 30 movies total right now.
Okay.
I actually had never seen a movie in my life until I watched The Host this afternoon. That's the expertise I bring.
Oh yeah, Daemin. I originally invited you on because as I watched this movie, I realized that as a you've been trying to get into acting for a while, right?
Yeah.
And then
I've been on and off with it. I did promise myself, like, okay, if Parasite ever won Best Picture, I would probably like actually take acting classes just to say, just to give it a shot. I like to act, but now I'm kind of like a working guy, so I'm kind of trying to do it like shooting on the weekends whenever they show up. So
I believe it was at AWA. You and I had a conversation where you said for a while there you kind of dropped off like wanting to act, and then like once Parasite became popular and people became interested in like Korean films, like you saw like, hey, wow, people are actually like, people like me could actually be cast in things, and like the idea of representation in film.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was like my biggest stigma against, acting at the time. And I know, like, you and I, we had our days together when we were at ATC. That was like a small theater company that me and Jordan had been in for a bit. Yeah, I wanted to act for a long time because I've always done some stage acting and was interested in doing some theater. I mean, I kind of got back into doing it again by just doing a lot of extra work. I mean, you could even see me in a couple of movies here and there, but I don't know, when you have a 6'1" tall Asian dude just stump it like walking around, you can really just spot the guy out. It's like, oh hey, I know that guy.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get into it. The Host 2006, a monster emerges from Seoul's Han River and begins attacking people. One victim's loving family does what it can to rescue her from its clutches.
So in the 2000s in Korea, we had what was called the McFarland case, where the U.S. military base threw in toxic waste into the river, and an environmental NGO in Korea reported it, and so it was a big scandal. And while being a big social issue, simultaneously, it also felt like a classic sci-fi film from the 50s, where a scientist makes a mistake or a soldier throws something away by accident, and then you have this monster that is births. So while being a part of reality, it also felt like the case fitted with these genre conventions, and that's where the film idea for the film started, and that was the opening sequence for the film.
I really like this movie. I think the only thing that really doesn't age well is the animation sometimes. I like the close-up of the close-ups of the monster.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that it had a presence, especially anytime like it would hit the water, it felt like, oh wow, that's, anytime it hit someone, anytime it grabbed someone, I feel like those worked, but some of the wides didn't work as well. Overall, I really loved this movie, and I want to keep going into Bong Joon-ho's library of films that he's done because he's really talented.
Yeah.
Filmography. Thank you.
The thing that makes Bong Joon-ho so significant is you notice that he does well in a lot of tonal shifts. With him, he definitely is, I don't want to say he's like a woke director, but he's definitely someone that really puts out a lot of like his own kind of agenda and views on things.
정말 드라마틱한 역사 속에 살고 있기 때문에 되게 격렬한 히스토리를 갖고 있다 보니까 개인과 사회, 개인과 역사가 충돌하는 일 자체가 많죠. 그래서 서유럽이나 뭐 예를 들어 오스트리아나 벨기에에서 나오는 영화 같은 경우는 다를 수밖에 없죠.
Anything with the screenplay, it usually delves with the plot of some sort of like capitalist tragedy or some sort of like chaos that could happen, you know. The Host was based off of an incident where they were dumping formaldehyde into a sink. Like this was an actual thing that happened on a US base. And then he pretty much was connecting that on the whole thing with pollution and environmentalism, how it messes up the environment. And then it kind of also talks a little bit about Agent Orange, you know, because in the movie they say, okay, we're gonna have Agent Yellow deployed on the Han River, and it's gonna solve the issue.
Agent Orange was just one of a series of heavy-duty chemicals the U.S. military used in Southeast Asia. Over 2.5 million U.S. soldiers were exposed to Agent Orange during the war. And let's not forget about the Vietnamese. Researchers in Vietnam claim that some 2 million cancers and other diseases, and 500,000 birth defects, were caused in that country by exposure to Agent Orange. And despite some bilateral cleanup efforts, the chemicals continue to pollute the soil there to this day.
If you knew much about Agent Orange and how much it messed up the environment and a lot of the defects and kind of like scars that a lot of people got from it when they were in the Vietnam War, you know, that was something that took a lot of commentary into. So, yeah, like that's one of the unique things that you kind of hear about when you kind of look into his works for that.
I was blown away by this movie. In particular, I loved like the opening of this film, like just the quick couple scenes from dumping formaldehyde in the sink to the fisherman finding the fish to the introduction and establishing the characters of the family, and then straight, as Daemin said, to the monster appearing. Like those quick scenes right after another were so concise and well written and purposeful, and they set up the entire film in just an incredible way. Like they establish every element of the film in those first couple scenes and got you hooked into the story right away, and that blew me away. Going from there, I appreciated the story of the family and sort of it being a story more about humanity, kind of in the face of this monster of just this pollution and capitalism and all that. Like just humanity and these just core family just trying to survive in the middle of all that. I thought he did an incredible job of bringing you into their world and making it a story about them rather than just a monster film. Overall, I was really blown away by this movie. Some of the shots were just amazing, and it has a lot of good things to say.
One thing I really was so blown away with is how much this film manages to be at the exact same time. I think as a monster film, it is fascinating in the sense that it does perfectly encapsulate what this monster represents, what it's metaphorical for, whether it's pollution or American interference in international affairs, how America sort of makes its presence somewhere, forces irresponsible means management, and then leaves the country to handle the repercussions of it.
Don't worry, everything is boom. We stopped the terrorists.
And one thing that I really particularly enjoyed for this as a monster movie is that it is the exact opposite of one of my biggest annoyances with so many in the genre. Regularly throughout this film, characters act selflessly. Characters act collectivistically and in the best interests of everyone. They often even sacrifice their own well-being and their own safety to be able to help someone they don't even know. This really feels similar to me. The family dynamic feels similar to Parasite in the sense that you have this family that's kind of a very warped, worn-out version of what they once were. Each of them with their own vices and their own issues, but none of them certainly at a highlight in their life. Still acting selfless. I mean, you have the father towards the beginning of the film when you see the first major attack, trying to help complete strangers he doesn't even know, and running towards this monster to help fight it. to protect people he doesn't even know. I think a disaster film or a monster film feels so much more full and satisfying and like mentally and spiritually nourishing to me when it has acts of selflessness and seeing the best of humanity fighting the worst of science or nuclear disaster or the worst of humanity.
I think this movie is also another example of why people should stop being afraid of subtitles. And like there are so many other movies that I've heard other people talk about this, but there's so many other movies that aren't in English that are like still tell really relatable stories and like do a lot better than any of the Godzilla movies we've gotten in the past like 20 years.
Yeah. It's just always so interesting how much of a personal self-established mental block people have with foreign films and subtitled films in general. Because as we were talking about, like, this is to me a much more personal film than any American monster movie I've seen in a very, very long time. And I think it's ultimately established in ignorance that people have this idea that they think every single Japanese film is either like Seven Samurai or Akiru. They have their own idea of what they think a foreign film is. And it's a shame that they let that remove them from so many great experiences.
I think with the host, it really focuses on the relationship of like government, you know, just like on how stuff with how whenever America comes in, they'll do their own thing, but don't think so much about the implications and kind of leave it for their government. And then kind of also talk about a little bit in how like government in general, it's very bureaucratic. They don't really care so much about the welfare of the people sometimes. So I think there was definitely some political commentary with that, particularly on this film.
To that end, though, that was one of the things that, while his portrayal of the government, and in particular the US government, is very complicated and nuanced, I found his portrayal of the monster in this film less so. And I think in a lot of ways that's because the monster really was meant to be a symbol rather than a character. There's really no gray area portrayed with the monster at all. He's pretty much just a killing machine that just kills, and then the people rise up and kill him. Like, and that's the whole thing. There's no complexity in terms of like, oh wow, this is like a wild mutation that maybe should be preserved or brought to a better habitat or anything like that. Like it's just pretty much, oh, this is an invader and we need to destroy it, which works in terms of it being a symbol for the themes he's trying to tackle. But it's just something I noticed that there was little empathy given towards the monster itself.
I actually kind of disagree with Nathaniel.
Fight!
I agree with what?
Fight!
Let's go!
Shut up and fight!
I definitely agree would have been interesting to have seen more complexity towards, oh, well, could we preserve this creature? But I actually found it pretty interesting that it seems more like an animal than this creature hell-bent on destruction and nothing more. To me, the creature in the host very much acts like an animal. In fact, it doesn't even really kill everyone it encounters. Oftentimes it'll move people to its nest, and it is not hell-bent on pure destruction, and it acts more to me like an animal.
Not necessarily, though, because it has the same trope that, like, other, like, even, I mean, Sharknado is almost a film that comes to mind where you have, like, sharks literally climbing out of the water to, you know, go after people, which is not something animals do. Like, this creature does not act the way predators do in the wild. It intentionally comes out and attacks people. And it's fine, that's a genre, it's a monster film. It's just something I noticed that they gave the creature very little nuance besides just being a threat.
I honestly think that maybe the monster would probably be more considered like a force of nature. Like it's not really an antagonist. Sure. It's definitely like a force of nature because it doesn't have an explicit plan to kill everybody. It's just like it's a being. This is an offspring of nature and like the result of whatever things we've done to it in some ways.
I know it's not saying a ton because I've seen most of the movies on this list, but this is definitely my favorite on this list that we've been doing for this month of movies I've not seen before. It's definitely the one I'll be going back to the most. I'm probably going to buy it fairly soon, and I completely recommend it towards anyone, that both fans of the monster genre and those who have been kind of pushed away by it, because I think it has something for both people. I think it makes really nice amends for flaws the genre has been suffering from, while still adding a lot of fan service for people that do like the genre. I think it is a great disaster movie, but it is also a very competent artistic film as well. I think it's a great family drama. I think it has very well written characters that have a more well fleshed out and developed story than a lot of full straight on family dramas. I think it has a lot of great stylistic choices, a lot of great directing choices. I think it's a great entry point for Bong Joon-ho as well, if you're looking to get into his work. I think if you are apprehensive of foreign film, I do think it's easily one of the more accessible foreign films as well.
I loved this movie. I think it handles the themes it explores with a lot of maturity and fairness. I think, like we talking about the complexity of both sides of sort of the struggle between the lower and upper class and governments and all that. It tells just a very good and concise story and wraps you into its characters right away. And really, it makes you feel like you're watching a very personal story that also happens to have a monster and all these themes that it explores. And it does everything it does, I think, with a lot of mastery.
I think that Bong Joon-ho, as a director, is probably one of the more accessible directors if you want to get over yourself and finally get into foreign films. He makes them to where it's relatable on every level, but it always feels personal. It gets you on an emotional level, but it also gets you on like this tense level when something bad happens. And I think it handles its themes really well. I highly recommend this movie to most anyone. Like, most anyone can jump in on this film and like really get something out of it and have a great time with it.
Sometimes when you watch this movie, it doesn't always feel like you are watching a monster movie, because like as everyone else said, it handles a lot of different themes pretty well without feeling like it's overwhelming, or they didn't have enough time to explore a lot of these kinds of issues that they're trying to get out there. It is a great movie to kind of get into, you know, if you are kind of getting into foreign film. I mean, especially if, you know, with the whole action being there, as well as some of the writing. It's nothing too complicated for anyone not to really understand. It's not like a Christopher Nolan movie, if that's what you're worried about. But I would highly recommend it for anyone who kind of get into foreign movies, but also maybe want to dabble a little bit with some monster movies in some ways.
All right, so thank you, Daemin, for joining us for this episode of Cinema Symposium. Is there anything that you'd like to plug?
I have a Twitter. I'm at Mystery Man on Twitter. So MISTARIIMAN. I do some game development stuff on there as well. So you know, keep a lookout on it. I'm working on a few projects. I'm hoping to at least get those announced at some point. But yeah, follow me on Twitter if you want to keep up with my views. I do watch a lot of movies, so sometimes I will post my views on that. So
cool. Well, thanks again for joining us. Make sure to like and subscribe all of Daemin's tweeters, and make sure to like and subscribe and comment on our video. Please share it with other people. We are looking out for that one person that commented yesterday, because, you know, we really appreciated that. We also made sure to give them a shout out. Please come back. We miss you.
You're our one fan.
Be our only fan.
Be our
literally our only fan. Not
the real.
Just that one fan.
Our only fan was the friends that we made along the way.
And that friends is one.
All right, well, that's been our episode. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Next up, we got Halloween to close this out. Finally made it.
Finale.
Our big finale. I'm so excited. Anyway, thank you so much for joining. Ever. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.